Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome again. We're glad you can join us today. It's 1 o'clock, so we're going to get started and we'll continue to welcome our colleagues into the space as they continue to arrive. This is our Wayne Reese Curriculum Leaders Update meeting where we provide information and updates, and we always archive all of this information in a space for you to access at any other point. So if you look at the screen, the bit.ly there is the site. It's risa.net/curriculum leaders. This is where we will archive everything. So when you see all of these links, know that you have access to these slides and to all of the information. So I'm Mary Treese, and we're going to get started. Next, please, Anna. Okay, here's the agenda. We have a robust agenda. We have a lot of information for you today. We're going to talk about everything from the November report. We have Mike Laffis to do legislative updates. We have Dr. Gentario from our special ed department who's going to talk about least restrictive environment. And of course, Cindy's here. We have updates around My Family, Summer Discovery. We had a fabulous meeting with our multilingual directors this morning. So we have a few updates from our multilingual team. We have updates from instructional technology. And of course, Dr. Paul is here to give updates around state and federal programs. Next, please. As always, we archive our Wayne Risa update report here for you to find. I believe I also sent it out through email, so you have access to that. And we have Mike Laffis in the room to give us some legislative updates. Mike?
Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully it's not too loud. I'm sitting in an airport waiting to travel back to Detroit. Um, I well, I'll start off with kind of the, the elections and what happened and what we're going to see in lame duck and into next year at the state level. I think obviously you've seen that the House Democrats lost control of the House of Representatives, so that will switch to Republican control starting in January. They will have a relatively small majority, so they'll have a lot of the same problems that the House Democrats had the last 2 years. But nonetheless, power will shift, and instead of a Democratic trifecta, there will be obviously we have the governor in place. The state senate was not up for re-election, so that will remain under Democratic control, albeit a very slim margin. And the House will go Republican with Speaker Matt Ball taking the gavel at the beginning of next year. What this means for the rest of this year in lame duck is still, I thought we would have more clarity around it, but it is still up for determination of what they'll actually be able to get done. There's an enormous amount of infighting in between House Democrats internally in their own caucus. The governor has basically pushed some more economic development stuff down their throats and said, if you guys vote for this, then after you do that, we'll vote on all the other things, all the other bills that you'd like to have votes on. What that ends up being, we'll have to see. As of right now, there's really only a few bills, education related, that we're paying attention to. One, there's a sex ed bill out there that makes some pretty substantial changes to sexual education and how we teach it. We are opposed to that bill. We're pushing for it not to come up in lame duck. I think it just, from our perspective, obviously, I think it's going to push angry parents towards districts who are going to have no choice but to implement some of these changes. And it's not something that we're interested in taking a look at or making changes right now. I think that is up there. We are primarily focused on healthcare and essentially the desire from some labor unions to repeal PA 152. If you're not familiar with PA 152, it essentially governs how we negotiate and how employers and employees pay for healthcare. The unfortunate part of this piece is that it's not just education that falls under PA 152. It is all the municipal, fire, and police unions that fall under it too. The large push for repeal is primarily from, I think, certainly the fire police unions, as well as some of the municipal unions that essentially they're probably going to push away the MEA AFT from kind of trying to drive this. However, the MEA has had a bill introduced that would essentially create, it does two things. One is create an 80/20 floor. So it kind of it effectively removes the hard cap, any districts that are under the hard cap, and as well as shifts by 7% the amount next, really beginning in January 1, or well, when the bill will go to effect, will shift about 7% of the cost for employees to employers. So districts would have to, granted, this wouldn't be until about April, districts would have to kind of amend their current budgets to take on those extra costs if this were to go in, if this were to pass and go into law. I have continued to share with legislators that this really is, I mean, this is a two-pronged problem, and none of which can be solved at the state level. One is it's a federal problem surrounding healthcare in the country, and the second one is a resource issue. I continue to share that if the state were somehow able to find $500 million for us to pay 100% of our employees' healthcare costs, we would be happy to do that. But unfortunately, there's really nothing that they can do at the state level that would do one of two things: essentially help half of the employees in the state, and then kind of cause damage to another half of employees in the state. And this is a quick example. We have a number of districts that have employees that actually do better under the hard cap than they would as an 80/20 district. And so, those employees who pay less right now would actually end up having to pay more. So it's a quick example of there really is no good solution to this problem. But again, I think there will be some sort of healthcare change. It will be, my push is to ask them to slow down. There's nothing that you can do now. I think we probably might end up seeing them peel off the extra 7% that districts would have to pay for the core staff, and then go to an 80/20 floor, or at the end, just a full repeal. I think from a district perspective, I think full repeal is scary, but ultimately, as long as you have a strong negotiating unit, I think that could end up being our best, not real solution, but best of all bad solutions being offered. So we'll have to see where that ends up. That's obviously something that we're continuing to meetings about, continuing to work with legislators on. But again, I mean, there's been one bill introduced, hasn't really gone much farther than that. Again, there's been a lot of infighting and people blaming people about why the elections were lost. From a budget perspective, I don't think that, I think we will see a close the books school aid supplemental, which is essentially just boilerplate changes. I don't believe we're going to see any actual money in that bill, even though we are still, I certainly have my own asks in. But I think the fact of the matter is most of the money is pretty much spent by now, and it's already not looking good for next year as it relates to any new ongoing funding or one-time funding. So really, it kind of all depends. The rest of the line document, there's no session this week, there's no session next week, and then they're in session the week after, 3 days the week after Thanksgiving, and they're supposed to be in 3 days on that week, and then really they're supposed to go through the 19th. And I've been told that they might have 5 more days of session. So we'll see if we can actually get done. Things can obviously go poorly. Bills can come up that we thought were dead, like school safety bills that we're not supportive of. That some are supportive, most we're not supportive of. But that sort of thing can always happen in lame duck, and we'll be watching that. But for right now, those are really a few things education related. As far as moving forward in the next year, from the state level, we're going to have a 1918 Senate, because one of our state senators was elected to Congress, and that seat can't be filled until the governor calls for a special election, which probably we're not going to see until April or May. So they will have very thin margin in the Senate. The Democrats are in control. That being said, policy-wise, I do not believe that we're going to see much in the way of policy moving forward over the next year or two. I mean, we're going to see House Democrats come in, and probably the first day vote or try and introduce bills that will get rid of all the changes that were made to FARA, all the union changes, essentially, all the changes that Democrats just did over the last 2 years. They'll reintroduce those bills to change them back. It won't go anywhere because obviously the Democratic Senate, but they'll never sign it. So from a policy perspective, my main concern right now is regarding changes to seclusion and restraint. I think that's going to be one of the main education bills that House Republicans are likely to introduce, and we have some strong concerns on that in terms of the advocates for the autism folks just wants to essentially outright ban seclusion and restraint, and that's not the solution here. And so we'll be working hard on that next year. Then finally, essentially policy-wise, what they're going to do is they're just going to volley the Senate and the House are going to volley bills back and forth with each other, and not much is going to happen. There'll be a lot of like, we're trying to work, you guys are stopping us from working, blah 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 blah. So we'll see. Well, maybe I'm wrong, but that's probably one. Yeah, if you're skeptical, that's probably where things are headed. As far as budget next year, that could be a thing where we have to fight to actually know what our budget might be at the end of June. As the state budget could likely actually go down to, we could see a shutdown possibility or a budget not being passed till the end of September next year. So we'll have to see how that all plays out. That's just kind of what we're looking at from the state level. The changes that you guys are going to have to be concerned about, and they're probably going to be large changes, are obviously at the federal level, and what we're about to see. I think you've seen President-elect come out with his 10-step education plan. I think, which first of all, the first one point that he had mentioned was like bringing prayer back in school, and obviously the getting rid of the U.S. Department of Education was part of that plan. There's a number of other things. Some of the things towards the end of the 10-point plan were already given. So what I think probably happens, I think they do have a hard time actually getting rid of the U.S. Department of Education. But what you can do is put people in place that actually know how to gut things. And that will be part of the problem, because what areas, what agencies within USAID do they actually get rid of? That sort of things, how that impacts programs that we already have going on. Very concerned as it relates to voucher programs. I can see them gutting areas of the department that kind of pools money into one specific area and says, "All right, states, if your state has voucher programs, you have access to this other pot of money that we're going to be offering." I've also heard that there is a group of Republican and Democratic House members that are currently discussing a rewrite of, or reintro of or redo is what it's called, a redo of No Child Left Behind, which would also include a voucher program. So we're going to be really, really busy at paying attention to what's going on at the federal level and to see how that's going to impact the states. I do think that I don't like to point out good things when the world's burning down, but I do think that there could be some good things that come out of some of these changes, or maybe when they're looking at specific certain regulations or certain things that we've, I think, in the past had a problem with the U.S. Department of Education, things that they've said that the MD has to do that we don't like. So we'll see how that all plays out. But that's really going to be a lot of our focus is that starting here in the third week of January. But with that, that's my update. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I am not seeing any questions in the chat, but if anyone has any to add, please do so.
And next we have Dr. Jennifer Theriault.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am here to provide a brief update on what is going to happen in our county. So the Michigan Department of Ed, Office of Special Education, has determined that Wayne County is in cohort 1 for LRE, least restrictive environment monitoring, for January 2025. So we will find out in December now who the on-site visit districts are, both LEAs and or PSAs. We will be coming out the week of January 27th. They will be spending full days in districts the 28th, the 29th, and the 30th. They will be interviewing superintendents, building administrators, general education teachers, special education teachers, ancillary staff, all about the IEP process, the understanding of specially designed instruction, your continuum of programs and services, etc. They will also be attending our parent advisory committee meeting on Tuesday night. So if you have parent representatives to the Wayne County PAC, they will be interviewing them as well. Beth Gonzalez and myself have been coming out to individual districts to meet with curriculum directors and your special education directors. We continue to do that. And if your district is chosen for LRE site monitoring, then we will be having specific conversations with you at that time. You will know well in advance and have participation in who those individuals are who will be interviewed. I will give you a list of titles, and then you'll be able to let us know who the best individuals are to have those ongoing interviews. Information that we have heard from the two ISDs who have already been evaluated by MDE is really our general education side and their knowledge of the IEP process and what specially designed instruction actually is. So we are meeting tomorrow with all of our special education directors and your finance teams. I will be providing this information for them as well. Any information that your teams need, please reach out to your special education directors regarding any of this process. They have all of the questions MDE will be asking, all of that information. But again, January 28th, 29th, and 30th. After the first part of December, I will know which districts have been chosen, so I will be reaching out to those districts individually. If you have any questions or concerns, you can ask me now, toss it in the chat, or my email will show up on the screen as well. So if there's any questions, I know that was quick, but just wanted to give you a brief overview. Feel free to reach out. Thanks, Mary, for the opportunity.
Thank you. We're glad you were able to be here. And there's Dr. Terrio's contact information if you did have any questions or wanted to talk more about this. Cindy, next slide.
Thank you so much. Cindy Taraskevich, assessment consultant at Wayne RESA, for those who I have not met. Moving into state testing resources and reminders. Here I'm just sharing some important dates. Again, the MDE important dates has been released for 2025, so it is linked up at the top. Some reminders of the documents that are coming out. The interactive checklist for College Board. It should have been emailed out to test coordinators on 11/19. If you did not receive that, please check your junk email. Make sure to make College Board a contact. A lot of the emails do go to junk folders. The interactive checklist will be required tasks that will allow the test coordinator to track what needs to be done and if they're completed for spring testing 2025. District coordinators will have access to that data reporting dashboard to track those tasks as they're completed at each school. I'm sorry, if you can go back one a little bit more. Thank you. Yep, and then also the College Board monthly newsletter. Those are starting to come out 11/26. And then College Board request accommodations, that window, and EL supports, that window is open. There are some changes with the SSD accommodations. One big one this year is that the embedded text, it will be embedded text to speech in the Blue Book app. So we don't have to worry about that floating accessibility menu anymore, which was a really big issue last year. There are some accommodation name changes, which are linked there. And if you want to review all of the accommodation updates that will take place for spring 2025, they are linked there. Also, College Board offsite test request is now open, so that link is there. Thank you so much. Next slide. I do have a 2025 state testing SMORE created. I have updated already, but as new information comes out for 2025 information, I will continue to update this SMORE. It has test content, resources for teachers, resources for students, links to the different data systems that you'll use throughout testing. So this is a resource available. It's linked there in the title. Next slide. I also have another SMORE. It's preparing state assessments. This is a monthly checklist of what needs to be done for all state testing to prepare. I know it seems far off, but we do have items that need to be done now in October, November. So it's listed by each month what tasks need to be done. And again, that is linked there in the title. Next slide. MDE, they have an entire schedule for the College Board webinars out that is available for registration now. So I have the registration links there. And these are all of the dates of the upcoming College Board sessions that will be available through MDE. Any session that has taken place already, it is linked in the second link there, recorded College Board webinars. And then there is an MDE technology webinar for technology coordinators on December 12th. The link to join is linked there. So some professional learning coming up. Next slide. The two tasks that really need your attention right now, manage participation for WorkKeys. This is done annually. It's done at the school level. The window is November 4th to December 6th. You're going into the Pearson Access Next account, which is linked there, log in. You're going to select the test window that you're choosing for your school. So test window 1 and test window 2, and the material delivery dates that go along with those test windows. This information, once you select it in Pearson Access Next, will transfer over into OEA so it can track your materials and deliveries. This has to be, again, completed at the school level. The next slide is another task that needs to be done now. This is the intent to participate. This window closes today, so make sure that you've checked your email. Again, check your junk email. A lot of stuff from College Board goes to the junk folders. Schools are automatically established if they had at least 5 students test in PSAT or SAT in the last 2 years, and if they have the grades 8, 9, 10, and 11 established in the EEM, and your contact information is up to date, you will automatically be reestablished. But if you do receive an email, make sure to follow the steps to do that intent to participate. Once all of those activities are done with WorkKeys and College Board, you need to go into OEAA. You're going to go to the Assessment Registration tab, then go to Test Center Participation, and you need to make sure that it says yes for WorkKeys, SAT, and PSAT by December 13th. The Accountability Index, the reports for 23-24 have been released to the public. They were released on Monday. They're available in My School Data Portal. You do not need a login to access those reports. If you do want to access the accountability downloads, you do need that updated accountability role added to your user access. So if you need help with that, please feel free to email me. There is a school index aggregate file that's available in the downloads, and you can view the data in an Excel file format for all of the schools in your district instead of having to go one by one into each of the reports. The thresholds have been released. They're listed there at the bottom. So you can see it is not an identification year for CSI, but they did release the bottom 5% cut, which is 32.17. So you can see where your school falls and if they would have been below that bottom 5% and identified for CSI this year, just as an early warning. And then also the TSI thresholds are also listed there. Next slide. This just reminds us of the identification years. TSI is annually. CSI will be an identification year next release, next fall. And then ATS is every 6 years. So we do not have an identification year until 27-28 for ATS. Those schools remain in the cycle until the next identification year. In Wayne County, you can see our numbers decreasing over the last 3 years for the numbers of schools identified. We went from 34 to 31. We're down to 22 CSI schools. And so that makes up 4% of the county. So we're looking good in those numbers for identifications. I do have a session tomorrow. Registration is still open. It's in person at Berger Baylor for understanding accountability, and the registration link is there. And there is an MDE index resource tool kit linked up at the top. Next slide. I wanted to throw this slide in there because it's very important. These are all the data systems through MDE that are linked to accountability. So you can see MSDS, your REP, your graduation rate in MSDS, your teacher-student data links, your STAR reports. Those are all linked and tie into your accountability data on the index. So it's very important that you are cleaning up the data, that you're following these submission and collection windows, and you're reporting data on time. You're working with your office staff to make sure everything is cleaned up before it's submitted. There is a REP submission that's due December 2nd at 11:59. So that's coming up. As you can see, that ties to your access to arts, your access to library. You want to make sure those are up to date. Also, MDE will start the loading the data into OEAA for pre-ID. Pre-ID will open January 6th. They're going to use the fall general collection and SRM data submitted on December 1st for your English learners, and your December 20th collection counts for your general assessment. So that data, whoever's enrolled at your school at that time, will be pulled into OEAA for pre-ID. Remember, you have to keep cleaning up pre-ID as you go. So just remember, this data has to be cleaned up as much as possible because it ties to accountability in all of these systems.
Cindy, we did have a question in the chat.
Sure. Mhm.
Are you able to repeat the steps for identifying if a school falls under 5%?
Yes, so the cutoff this year in the threshold is in this top, one slide up. Yep, in this threshold chart right here, CSI bottom 5%, 32.17. So you can be identified for CSI if you have a 4-year graduation rate that's at 67% or below, or if you're in the bottom 5% at this 3217 count. That's your overall score. So this top left box, if you fall at 32.17 or below, you would have been identified for CSI this year. Or if your graduation rate, the 4-year graduation rate. So you have to go into this component and open up this component to check your 4-year rate. It's not the combined rate. Check that 4-year rate. If it's under 67%, those are the 2 criteria to identify you for CSI.
Thank you. And then we also did have a shout out in the chat as well for the understanding accountability session. So thank you for that.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, next slide. Benchmark assessment reimbursement. It's been bumpy for the opening. The link in the spotlight is not the correct link to the application. So it is in your Nexus, in your Nexus account. It's going to be listed under My Opportunities, and it is the benchmark reporting and funding application listed there under My Opportunities. Districts can request reimbursement for ELA and math assessments for grades K through 8 if they're using NWEA, Curriculum Associates iReady, or Renaissance Star. You have to make sure that you submit the application in Nexus and that you have submitted your assessment data and your mode of instruction in the Data Hub. Both of those have to be completed by December 16th. If the data is not sent, they will not release the funding. There have been technical issues this week with the opening. Districts are getting error messages. Just continue to work through the application. The issues should be resolved by the end of the week, and then you can submit then. Next slide. More information for the benchmark assessment. In January, MDE will determine award amounts. Remember, there wasn't a per pupil funding amount this time. So you'll be invited to submit budgets in Nexus at that time. So if you're working on that budget summary page, you can save that page to apply later, submit the rest of the application, but the budget summary page you're going to apply later. And then allocations will be filled in from MDE in January. MDE encourages all districts, even if you're not using one of the approved assessments, to fill out the reporting application. Just select no, and then it will ask what assessment you're using so they can track that data. And then there's some resources listed there. I also have a benchmark assessment SMORE that I've created. And that's it. Any other questions?
I'm not seeing any in the chat right now.
Okay, you have my email, so if you have questions, please feel free to email me.
All right, looks like it's my turn. So I am blessed to share with you this afternoon as the Region 10 My Family Coordinator. The My Family Engagement Centers are something new from our state. We are technically in year 2, but we wanted to really bring this to you as we start to develop what does this mean for Wayne County and Oakland and Macomb. So as you look at the 10 My Family Centers throughout the state, we represent Region 10, which also includes Macomb and Oakland. And again, I'm blessed to be the coordinator of this work. It comes from the 35I grant funds, and it is a 4-year funding source. And so we have 4 years to implement and then work to sustain the work. We really are focused on families and communities and in partnership with schools to help us all think about how are we not only engaging families, but shifting from engagement to relational partnerships. Oftentimes in schools, we are transactional, either by what we're required to do, as some of the things that Cindy touched upon, but also in the traditional way school has been done. And so one of the overarching themes of My Family is to think about how are we developing a relational partnership with families so that their children can be successful from cradle to career, and shift away from that transactional approach where we say, this is the event, this is when you come, and this is how you do it. So we're excited to engage in this wide work. Next slide. And so when you think about what is My Family, even though it says center, is not a physical space, but it's a system. It's meant to develop a system not only throughout our state, but to think as a region, and then also to think locally. What does it really mean to work with families from a strength-based, asset-based approach so that they truly see themselves as partners in the work, both from when they're born all the way through that post-secondary or career development. And so what it means for us at Wayne Risa and Oakland and Macomb, it means that we have a team committed to really thinking about what resource development, what professional learning, and what community partnerships would benefit not only the My Family work, but the schools within Wayne County and our 2 cohort counties. And so we really are working to not only engage at the state as one of the official centers, but also think about intentional and meaningful materials that we can produce that would be school facing and family facing that would benefit our schools in Wayne County. Next slide. And so one of the tools that already exist that we are really excited to promote is the Michigan Family Engagement Framework. The team at MyLeap acknowledges that the word engagement really is almost an outdated phrase as they work to update their materials, because again, we want to move away from engaging but to partnering and really thinking about what is our current state of partnership and support of families, and where do we hope to be as we think about developing relationships. We often say relationships are at the heart of everything. And so we take the stance as we think about how do we engage and support families both in our schools and outside as partners in the community. And what this framework document has inside are some really helpful tools to help us question, reflect, and self-evaluate in a way. How do we really see our support of children before they come to our doors? And when they're with us, what do we really have in place and where might we improve? It also is exciting to think about how might this document also coincide with our school and center-wide essentials. And so those are some of the things we're working on to share eventually with schools to benefit the work. Next slide. So coming up next week, the MyLeap team has a short webinar available on November 26th. There should be a link in the chat in order to join. If you're interested, they're right now, they even aren't requiring registration. They simply shared the link and said, anyone interested in hearing more about what really is My Family, where does MyLeap come into play, where's MDE and all of this. It's a quite informative webinar that we plan to join, and gives you just a bigger picture for what is My Family and how might it impact you. But we are excited to, in the coming months, share more with Wayne County around what it means for you. In the meantime, if you have family events or you just want someone to brainstorm with, to think about what are we really doing for families, feel free to contact me and I'd love to engage in that conversation. Okay, we're going to shift to thinking about this summer. Normally I'm talking about the summer from our Wayne Risa Lit Lab and Boys College stance, but we would be amiss not to highlight the Summer Discovery Grant that some of our schools participated in last year, and perhaps more might think about this year. So the Summer Discovery Grant comes from the Balmer Group in partnership with United Way and either other sources. And really, it's an opportunity for us to really think widely again about how do we support students in the summer. And it comes with a lot of funding if you meet the requirements. Next slide. And so in a nutshell, here are some of the key points of the Summer Discovery Grant. It is, of course, in person. They're looking at a certain demographic of 50% free and reduced lunch, and it is focused on first through ninth graders incoming. And so when you think about the programs that we offer, something like our Kinder Lit Lab, which targets incoming kindergarten, wouldn't apply to this, but anything else would. And that's why we do plan to share with those who have applied to be our Lit Lab and Boys College sites in 2025. We do plan to email out some content that you might highlight within your Summer Discovery Grant application, if you so choose to apply, that would lift up our Lit Lab and Boys College curriculum as your chosen curriculum. The blessing of this opportunity is that you can either choose to use your own district curriculum for what you do in the summer, or you can use their Lavinia curriculum. A few of our sites last year who did both lifted that they would definitely still use our Lit Lab when given the choice, but that the Lavinia curriculum was valid in quality as well. So again, if you're one of our 2025 Lit Lab Boys College or Boys College sites, we will be giving you some content to use in that grant if you choose to move forward with this. Next slide. So this is a snapshot of the funding. One of the things that I will lift again is that it's a minimum 20-day program, but 8 hours of the day. And so for some sites, at first, that takes us back to say, ooh, I don't know if this is for me. But when you take a look at the amount of funding that you could be eligible to receive, and you think about the benefit of having a full day program for parents who work, it is something that may find you increasing enrollment in your summer as opposed to decreasing. Many of our programs don't run a full day. And so when they say 8 hours, they're counting both before and after care with a minimum of 3 to 4 hours of instruction. So as you consider your staffing, you might find yourself getting quite creative and thinking some teachers might want to come in and teach only the enrichment part, or you might have paraprofessionals or others in roles that would love to have the before and after care assignments. So there's a lot of flexibility in your staffing as long as you have qualified staffing within that 3 to 4 hour of instruction time. So we do have, again, some sites that participated last year. If you're interested to know who they might be, I can share their contact information with you so they can give you their insights as far as being that summer discovery site, and in some cases Lit Lab site as well. But just wanted to make sure we brought this to you so that those who were lacking in funding for summer programming might take advantage of this really healthy allotment. Next slide. So there are a few things that you can do to learn more. Certainly you can go to the Summer Discovery website. The QR code takes you to their site, which lists their upcoming webinars. And they do have an early application and a final application. So early deadline and final deadline are the same. The only difference is the December would give you a response sooner than the January, but January 31st is the final application site. Any questions? All right.
Okay. Just double checking that no questions from Melissa? Okay. Excellent. So I am Kaylin Willaten, and I am one of our multilingual consultants here at RISA. And I have a lot to talk to you about today, so we're going to get rolling. So first of all, if you are not aware of this, some other people in your department certainly are. There's been a lot of problems on Nexus with the Section 41 report. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about the report you have to put in from 23 and 24 that was initially due on October 15th. Was able to meet because of a different meeting with Kelly Alvarez today. So part of this is from the last email that went out with our most updated information, and then some of it she told me today. So one of the things I've been able to add to the slide is 2025, which I will talk to you about in a moment. So everyone, and this has been true for a while, you can complete the narrative sections of it and just kind of hang on to it and get ready to copy and paste it in the system before you submit, right? Now, I know this looks complicated, so if you need more questions, you have the MDE email out there on this, because if you did not have administrative costs and your final 2024 allocation matches Table 2, you could submit. And if this sounds extra complicated, you could wait as well. But those are the only people who can submit right now because of the glitch in the system. And you will just end up having to resubmit if it doesn't match and if you did have administrative costs. All those little details are just because of whatever reason in the system, those boxes aren't working right. That's what's going on with that. So as you may be well aware, is usually the new allocations come out on November 1st, and the deadline to submit all the paperwork is January 15th. As far as we know right now, that deadline is still holding on January 15th in 2025. Now, despite the fact that we have a little MD allocations page linked there, which you can go to, the new allocations, the preliminary allocations for 2025 were supposed to go on there. What I've heard is as of this morning, they're not. But luckily, I met with Kelly Alvarez today, and all of Wayne County should be on that list, on that link there in the little gray box. So you know what your allocations are, or I'm sorry, your preliminary allocations are for this school year. You've got those, so you can begin to work on how you're spending that money. If you need to make a purchase now, which could make sense, you need to email that MDEL email to get pre-approval. And if they pre-approve it, you can even spend that now. And then at the moment, like I said, all of this will be submitted unless they come back and tell us otherwise by January 15th. So I know that might be clear as mud. If there's a question about something I've said, I'm happy to repeat it or clarify it further. If it's something beyond that, you're just going to have to use that email there to MDE. I am learning much more about this process than I ever thought possible, but I actually cannot log into the system and see it. Okay, so can I go to the next slide, please? So another thing that happened at our meeting with Kelly Alvarez of MDE this morning, we had our Wayne County Multilingual Collaborative, and we were fortunate enough to have her attend. So we were talking about some different things that are happening. None of this, I want to state really clearly, is for sure, right? Nothing is for sure, but using prior history of what happened in the previous administration, we lost a lot of newcomers. Because of different immigration restrictions. The problem with that from our point of view, from running educational programming point of view, is that we lost a lot of good people in that time because, with the lack of influx, then we assigned people to do other things, people left to do other things. And we've really, in the last few years, been able to rebuild a lot of newcomer programming in the state of Michigan. We don't want to lose that because if we know anything about cycles, immigration cycles, is that they come back. And in Michigan overall, just like the United States overall, has been increasing its numbers of multilingual learners in sheer numbers as part of the population and also in percentages of the classrooms that we serve. So MDE suggested, and this is, I'm stealing it completely from Kelly Alvarez's presentation this morning, just some ideas to start thinking about how can you maintain your people and your funding, knowing that at some point it's going to circle back around, even if we lose some students initially. Well, that idea of what you can budget for and what you can carry over, right? Putting people into other kind of positions. And for different reasons, I'm going to talk to you about co-teaching in a minute, but I want you to kind of hang on to that second bullet point and considering some different kinds of co-teaching opportunities for those teachers. We really use Section 41 is to be used for multilingual learners and their education, but there are other funding sources that can help, right? Title I, 31A, and some of the other ones there, some creative thinking around those can also support multilingual learners. I mean, multilingual learners are general education students first, and then other characteristics that apply to other grants, may also apply to them as a population as well. In the meantime, we also have sent out a survey that we wanted one person in your district to sign up for because we have had a lot of newcomers this year. And as you can see, the Office of Global Michigan expects a lot more to come in the next few months. A lot of these cases are humanitarian parole. And what that means is they tend not to come in through our agencies like Samaritas. And when that happens, it's just harder to keep track of people. They're being sponsored by family members and other things. And, so you may have gotten an influx after count day. You may continue to do that. And so we're also looking for different ways to possibly support the rising influx of students, who may not have been in your districts on October 2nd. Can we go to the next slide, please? So the other thing MDE was talking about this morning was, a lot of talking about what might happen, right? Again, we want to be clear that no one knows exactly what's going to happen. There's nothing clear that will take place. A lot of this is based on, the new administration's talking about what their plans might be, right? Wayne Risa has not had a chance to do this yet, but we will also be looking at MDE guidance and the guidance here that this links to from the Michigan Immigrant Resource Collaborative on students and immigrants, especially undocumented immigrants, and be coming up with a page of guidance or so for you as well. But can we go to the next slide? So linked in that document, you'll have more things, but this is some of the quotes from it. So back with the Supreme Court case of Plyer v. Doe in 1982, part of that is that schools, we don't care. We want to educate children. We don't care what their status is. We don't care what their family status is. What this Merck guidance is adding is that all of this is covered under FERPA, right? We're not allowed to release a student's educational records without consent, right? This includes if someone were to show up, even speaking very nicely, to the school, as an immigration enforcement authority. That includes, but is not limited to, all the things you see in the final paragraph, meaning their names, social security number, other personal identifiers, right? The important thing will be, just in general, we should always probably have had a policy around this. So this guidance will support you with that. Guidance from MDE, which will also be, guidance from RISA will be coming down around this as well. But a good place to have this, besides in your regular school policies and handbook, might be in your EL handbook. So every district or LEA is required to have an English learner handbook, and that could become part of that. But the important thing too is just beginning to think about where, who might need to know about this, because of course this is going to come in the end from your board and superintendent, but who is the person who's answering the doorbell when it rings, right? What do central office, what do school office, what do secretaries need to know around all of this? So when you come up with a policy, who needs to know what, and they need to have their protocol of what to do. Next slide, please. Okay, so on to brighter and happier things, though I think at the moment, they're also stressing a lot of people out. So we do have new Section 41 legislation, and there's a link to it there. And we've been sending it out monthly to our multilingual page and the superintendent, the whole RISA notices each month. And what this is based on are service minutes for multilingual learners. It's based on Michigan guidance in Section 41, and now there's a legislative piece to it as well. And this is all based on Office of Civil Rights cases. So if you look at the U.S. Department of Education and you look at the Supreme Court cases around this, it talks a lot about reasonable progress and having an educational program based on sound research and sound educational theory and things like that. So what we did is we took a look at what does that look like then when the Office of Civil Rights comes in, because there you won't find, like you might in a different sector of education, exact amount of minutes for certain things, right? So what we found over the last 20 years of settlements between districts and the Office of Civil Rights nationwide, but including one in Wayne County, was when they come in, basically the minimum that they've put in is 30 minutes of English language development services for students daily or the weekly equivalent. And for newcomer students at level 1 English language proficiency, those are your true beginners. I can explain a little more about that to you if you're interested. But we to level 1, an hour a day, right? As you see on the slide. Now, MDE wants to really stress that quite frankly, no one has right now across the state all of their ducks in a row, so to speak. What the legislation says is that you must agree to this. So going back to the Office of Civil Rights, we don't want you just to say, oh, well, I don't think we can do this, so I'm not going to accept Section 41 funds. That's not the answer, because in the end, were you to have OCR come to your district, they don't care whether you've accepted these funds or not. These are requirements, right? These are the kinds of judgments that they have been making in about 19 cases over the last 20 years, right? MDE also doesn't want you to say, oh, I'm not going to take these because, we haven't met this requirement yet, right? You're agreeing to meet this requirement. So you're agreeing to have a plan or to be working on a plan and to be working towards this. There are lots of ways to do this, including building capacity in your own district by helping fund endorsements for teachers who are currently on staff. Okay? We can talk a little bit more about that later. But so our biggest recommendation is to, yes, take the funding because it doesn't exempt you from anything not to take it. And even though that funding is not where we are advocating for it to be by a long shot, it is increasing every year. So it is well worth taking. So we've got all these minutes. How do we start planning to meet them? Next slide, please. So I'm going to give you a little explanation about English language development. So we distinguish in English language development between what we call integrated ELD and designated ELD. Now, most districts across the state are doing designated ELD, which means sometimes they might have a class for English language development, especially for newcomers, or they might be doing small pull-out groups, or they might be doing small push-in groups where the teacher is pushing into the gen ed classroom, but they're not co-teaching. They're still kind of seeing their group of students within there. That, of course, is one way to do things. And quite frankly, it is necessary, some form of that, for students at the beginning level, at WIDA level 1.0 to 1.9, actually technically called the entering level. But especially as students increase their English language proficiency, you want to see much more integrated ELD or integrated with content areas. So what integrated ELD is either having one teacher who is certified in their area, whether that's an elementary teacher or, a certified ELA teacher in the middle school level or math or whatever. And they also either have their ESL endorsement or a bilingual endorsement. So dually endorsed teacher and a dually endorsed teacher who is combining these things. The other way to do this is to have co-teaching happening between one of the teachers who has their, content endorsement or I say elementary certificate, and then another teacher who either has the ESL or the bilingual endorsement. Can you go to the next slide, please? So another question we get a lot is, oh, but wait a minute, we're always asking our content teachers to try to make things accessible to multilingual learners and all of their students. Is that what you mean by integrated ELD? And the answer to that is no. So for these to count as service minutes, again, we either need a dually endorsed teacher or we need a co-taught class. Meaningful access to core content is the responsibility of everyone at Tier 1. And that's when you get into things like SIOP, the Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol. I know a lot of your staff members have either come in our in-person or our online training for that. And then all of the other kinds of trainings and things that we offer. Those things really help Tier 1 teachers provide meaningful access to core content. And that is a responsibility, because imagine even that you are getting your hour a day or more from your ELD teacher. you're still in a room, in a mainstream classroom for 5, 6, 7 hours of your day, right? So that is something that everyone is responsible for. Next slide, please. So now, having looked at that, okay, and knowing that we still want designated ELD, especially for level 1 students, let's think about integrated ELD. And I want to think about this in a way that really stresses the co-teaching piece. You may have dually endorsed teachers. You may have a sufficient student population where really you want all of your teachers, or as many teachers as possible, to become dually endorsed because it makes more sense than co-teaching, and that's fine as well. But if we think about different co-teaching models, the interesting thing is that after dual language, when the goal is for all students to become bilingual and biliterate, so you have native English speakers and native speakers of a different language, working together and in school together. By the way, that has different requirements because it is a very great programming idea that actually shows most achievement for the students. However, you can't have 40 languages or even 10 languages being spoken all over your district. You need to really have one language that has a lot of speakers in it that's other than English. If that is your case, we'd love to talk to you about that and plug you into some other people with resources around that. But that is not the case for most districts and PSAs. So after that, co-teaching has the greatest student achievement. So we're not talking about an ELD teacher going in and acting as a para or just supporting in content. We're actually talking about being able to co-plan, even though there's lots of different ways to co-teach, being able to co-plan together, what this might look like. And we want to offer a lot of support around this as well. So if you're interested, you can also reach out to us. I can also send you the link to some of the research if that would help you advocate. But it's something to think about because this is a systems issue in the end, right? So it's not enough just to have 2 teachers who could be teaching together. Now we have to make sure certain students are actually placed in their classroom. Then there are other ways maybe of getting creative around it because while, yes, maybe ideally I'm in the classroom with you every single day of the week, if that can't be, maybe I'm in your Algebra 1 class on Mondays and Wednesdays, for an hour at a time, and I'm in the geometry class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Maybe not as ideal, but still, if we're looking at that, that's 2 hours a week right there, for all your levels 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s. And that's almost meeting the requirement. So it's just things to play around with, and be happy to talk you through some of these models if you would find that helpful. Next slide, please. Okay. I have taken up a lot of your time. I know there's a lot to think about, but just for some fun here, we have different professional learning opportunities coming up. The biggest one I want to stress is Huda Isa got to present at our Newcomer Educator Network in October, and she's coming back for our Equity Literacy Series in January. Michigan educator and national author and speaker. And then you have other links there for upcoming things that we have, and that's available to you on this slide deck. Next slide, please.
Elin, quick question about that learning
Yes, sir.
opportunity.
Yes.
Is that offered at no cost and are educators and administrators welcome at that?
Yes, all of these are, the Equity Leader Series just is anyway, and so is the Newcomer Educator Network. But the ones that aren't, and did I not put the code? I think maybe the code's on the next slide. I will type this in here in the chat as well. For our virtual offerings, come on, Zoom. We have a code to zero out the core. I cannot type today. Ignore what I just did. There we go. That's what I was trying to do. That is the code you want to put in to zero out the cost for any virtual event with the multilingual department at RESA. But actually, a lot of these, the multilingual updates, the bridge between multilingual and special education, we're having a lunchtime drop-in series and an after-school drop-in series. It's the exact same series. Individual sessions, you can drop in to think about, when might it be language and when might it be a disability, things like that. All of those, honestly, you don't even need the code for because they are at no cost, right as they stand. So please take advantage of all of those. And next slide. Yep, and I should have I probably should have put that code on the other slide, but now you see it very big there as well, that WCML 2025 at checkout. And please, if you'd like to get our notifications, reach out to Kelly. She'll put you in our group, and I dropped my email in the chat and can do so again. So we know that's a lot, but hopefully you'll begin to think creatively about how you might be providing these service minutes. Finally, along that line, in early December, a lot of us are going from across the state to Lansing to talk more about how MDE is rolling out English Learner Program Evaluation for this year. And it's really around a lot of these topics I just brought up because it's really about how are you providing service to your multilingual learners. And when we come back, we'll be able to be having some more regional work sessions where you can come in with a team and work with us. And I'd like to offer some virtual ones as well. I think the in-person ones actually for that they can be better because it's a real chance to collaborate with people around you in a much easier way than online. But we want to offer support in many modalities so people can get what they need.
Thank you, Kaylin. We appreciate all of your time. And Michelle and I keep putting the resource link into the chat so that you can access all the slides. We know it's a lot of information. That's why we archive things for you. I don't think John Ferris is with us. John? No? Okay. So this is just a save the date thing. There's nothing that you can register for just yet, but this August, we are partnering with Westwood Community Schools, and we applied for and got the 99D Teaching Diverse History grant. And so we're going to be holding a summit. We've been having conversations with Dr. Hassan Kwame Jeffries, who we think is amazing. He does a podcast, Teaching Hard History. If you haven't heard of it, it's really worth a listen. It'll be a 2-day conference, and we just really want to start promoting this and talking about it now because we know how important it is to teach full and inclusive history to our students for full understanding. So we're really excited about this. Much more to come. We have a whole planning team here at Wayne Risa working on this. Next, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am not Judy Bowling, instructional technology and library consultant. My name is Matt Smoot. I am the learning, innovation, and technology consultant. And I'm going to be talking to you today a little bit about the some instructional technology department news. So first things first, we have our Makers Summit coming in the spring of 2025, Thursday, February 13th. It's going to be at the Henry Ford. We've done it at the Henry Ford for the past couple of years now. You'll see a barcode right there. This is a great event that is bringing in people from all over the country. We have a keynote from Erica Sandstrom, who's known as the Green Screen Gal. So it's going to be a lot around green screen and STEM, and really great experience. It is a $25 fee, but that does include sketchies, that includes just lunch for the day. So encourage STEM folks, people interested in maker spaces, to come on out. And registration is open at that bit.ly and that QR code. Next slide, please. And then next coming up, we have our PL in a Box, Professional Learning in a Box. We did this last year and had great success. So by signing up, teachers, staff will be able to get hands-on materials, different experiences, lesson plans in a box that is geared towards computational thinking, creative thinking. It starts on January 21st. Again, same as the Makerspace, it's $25. With this event, you will be getting 15 sketchies for this, or teachers will be getting 15 sketchies, and just a really great way and a different kind of way to have that professional learning right then and there for the teachers. No need for a sub or anything like that. So definitely encourage sending this out to anyone that would be interested in that. And that is all I and Judy had.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just going to share my screen really quickly here. Matt, thanks so much. All of those things are so creative. I can't wait to get my box in the mail. Thank you. All right. So we have a few state and federal updates today for you. Thanks for having me, everyone, by the way. It's carryover time, right? So as a gentle reminder, the final expenditure reports have to be completed, submitted, and processed before you actually open up your consolidated app and accept carryover. So if the FER is not complete, then your carryover is not going to be correct in your consolidated app. And once it is, and it is processed, like the FER is processed, and you put it actually into the system, then it kind of messes everything up in the app and you have to start all over again. So I don't want that to happen to you. So that's why I'm giving you this gentle reminder now that FER first, and then you're going to get your carryover. So overall, all you really need to know is sign, seal, deliver, and carryover is yours, basically. All right, so if your carryover number in the consolidated application does not actually match the carryover amount in your final expenditure report, I want you to check and ensure that you budgeted all of your money last year in the Khan app. So if you left a little money on the table, it may actually show up in your current carryover. So we noticed that some people last year were having a little bit of some trouble with this. So if you need support, please reach out. We're always here to help, but of course, reach out to your Team 5 region representative from the Michigan Department of Education as well. All right, so speaking of leaving money on the table, districts and ISDs that are not applying for any or for all federal funds for the current fiscal year, you have to complete the request to relinquish funds form. And the form has to be emailed to OFSF Financial Unit by November 30th of the current fiscal year in order to relinquish the funds for that year, and must be resubmitted each fiscal year that the funds are going to be relinquished. So I think that the big reminder here is that the form has to be signed by both the superintendent or the director and the president of the school board, and must be accomplished by must be accompanied by a board resolution or approved board action to actually relinquish those funds. So there are some other steps that you would need to take if you were going to relinquish funds. And I wanted to take a moment to share what it actually looks like in Nexus in relation to carryover. The arrows on the screen indicate the column that you're actually going to be editing. So you might be asking, well, what numbers actually go in there? So you want to update those to match your allocation available and to match your carryover amounts. Often our state and federal grant leaders, they don't check these boxes, but please do adjust these numbers. Remember to untoggle the radio button from apply later to apply now as well. That's another little gentle reminder for you. All of those little things you have to do, otherwise Nexus doesn't act right. So we just wanted to make sure that you had all of those in your back pocket. Also, it's never too early to prepare for your on-site review, and it's never too late to register as well. So we are partnering with the Michigan Department of Education, specifically our own Cheryl Irving, right? Who used to be over at Lincoln Park. She's been over at Michigan Department of Education, and she has been such a wonderful help to Wayne Risa, and also to facilitating some of these external things around preparing for success for an on-site review workshop. So even though we've already had one on-site review workshop, which took place on 11/6, we have another one coming up on 1/30. It'll still be open for you, and we hope that you can join us. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about homeless and foster care needs, okay? So speaking of on-site review, before submitting your consolidated application, you're going to want to collaborate again with your homeless and your foster care liaison to reassess the needs of your students experiencing homelessness and also those in foster care. So be sure to review the guidance issued on June 21st, 2024 to ensure that you have compliance with reservation set-aside requirements. Remember that all students eligible under McKinney-Vento are also entitled to Title I services. Therefore, it's really crucial to provide evidence that the Title I director and the homeless liaisons meet regularly to have thoughtful conversation about the needs of those students. The needs assessment that I've provided on the slide here can be, well, it can assist in the conversation, but it also can contribute to your data story and also to some on-site review materials and evidences that you'll be collecting as you work with your homeless and foster care liaison. All right, so there's a free opportunity here for you for your homeless and foster care liaisons. And I'm not going to give you the message. I want to make sure that we have Brian Perlman actually give you the message. This is a free workshop with Brian Perlman, and he's going to be chatting a little bit about parental involvement.
This is Brian Perlman from St. Louis. I am so excited to be coming to Wayne Risa in December. Very excited to share my new book, From Struggles to Successes, a handbook for parents and educators. At our training, I will share lots of ideas and strategies to help increase family engagement and lots of other related topics. Can't wait to see you all then. Have a great rest of the school year, summer and fall, and see you in December.
All right, so we look forward to seeing you at that. Jan Callis and I from Oakland ISD, we have combed through all the MDE memos, and we've added any that we thought would be helpful to the folks in the room here who might oversee grants and also curriculum as well. So all of these links on this screen will take you to that specific memo. Okay, folks, we're almost done here. We have a couple of state grant apps that are due soon. So I just wanted to put out a reminder to you, if you were going to put in for Section 33, which is the Visual Arts and Music K-5 grant, the apps are due 11/21, right? So we're getting close. If you need help or support, make sure you reach out. And then I noticed that a lot of people are reinstating, renewing, or applying for the first time for FIRST Robotics, PK-12. The app is due 12/2/2024. There are hyperlinks within this webpage, within this PowerPoint, to help aid in your decision as to whether or not you're going to put in for that grant, or perhaps some helpful resources and tools as well. Okay, comparability. Oh, it's comparability time, everyone. And you're probably wondering, is my district exempt? Well, I've attached the memo for you so you can take a look to determine whether or not you have to apply for comparability, right? Comparability is due on December 15th. And basically, we're figuring out whether or not we have equitable resources for our Title I schools, right? So we want to make sure that we're not understaffing Title I schools and we're not supplanting as well. And so comparability helps us to do that. That is found in Nexus, and it is due on December 15th. And here's some other resources I have for you. We actually had MDE come and do a webinar with us on November 13th, and we captured that video for you. Okay, so we have that here on this slide. If you're wondering, what's comparability? Do I have to do it? We have an FAQ document that was generated from the 11/13 meeting as well. We thought, hey, if some of our other constituents have questions, you might have those same questions. So we captured those for you. And then last, we've listed here the FAQ document from the Michigan Department of Education as well. And Andrea Rogers, she's the one who really leans into Title I comparability from MDE. Amazing to work with. And the video is so helpful. It'll take you through every step. But wait, you know us, there's more. So to deepen our support, Jan and I from Oakland ISD have created some technical assistance sessions, right? And one's going to be on December 4th in a virtual space. And so you can just hop right in and we can help you out with comparability. Or if you wanted to phone a friend, call me, right? I'm always here to help you. So we have the video listed for you. And then we also have our technical assistance session on December 4th. If that doesn't work, no problem. You can stop by RISA, you can call, we can do a Zoom, whatever is best for you. We're just here to help. Thanks very much, everyone, for having me today. Appreciate it.
I believe that takes us to the end of our updates. We recorded this entire meeting today and we will edit and send it out. We found we had great feedback from that. And that way you can share it or pieces of it with your colleagues, people who need the information, and you have the updates and you have the slides. I'm going to reiterate what Carol Ann just said. We are here to help. Let us know how we can best support you. Have a great rest of your week.